G'dowdy poggers, and welcome to another episode of the PogState, a very special one. As we just concluded the regular season, we are preparing for playoffs. That is why we are in the LOL Park Arena. I'm ATLUS. I'm thankfully joined once again, as per usual, by Valdes, Chronicler, and Wolf. And unfortunately for people called ATLUS, we have predictions that we did at the beginning of the season. We also we got to adjust these predictions as well at the end of round one. If there was anything that we could do to make our predictions work a little bit better by moving two teams, we get to switch places for two teams to save our predictions. We could do that.
And luckily, even though I wasn't able to make that episode where you guys did that and no one told me, Laure made the right choice for me. So, you know what? I'm just going to give her a shout out for making the right call.
And
Thanks,
so, we have all of the results. They are in. We haven't tabulated them ourselves, but I have the envelopes of doom. There is a happy face on this first place one. And how do we do this?
You're supposed to open it and then you distribute.
Wait, there's
you gotta
2
open
seconds?
There's 2 seconds? We got a tie for second? That's
my God.
actually...
All right, let's go winner to loser.
I think we
I
think we do the first two first. No, the 2 second places.
The 2 second places?
Yeah.
Okay.
But then we know it's going to be Max when he's not in the first two
I mean, we
second
already know
places.
it's Max anyway, right?
I don't know.
Like-
I don't know if
Do it
we
in order.
know.
Just do first
No,
to
let's,
fourth.
Let's
no,
just
no,
do
no,
first
let's
to
do
fourth.
The, no,
Let's
no,
do
no,
fir-
no, no. Let's
No?
do the 2 seconds. I'm with Mal on this.
You guys are weird.
You guys are crazy.
Like
Okay,
some people
let's
count.
do
Some
fourth
people
then.
count
I'm
up. Some
okay
people
with it.
count down. Some people start from the middle. I guess. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, when you eat a
both of-
pizza, you start with like
if-
you
if
I
cut
don't
you
up
can
play
see-
hide and seek with you.
both of these seconds have a little happy face on them. I
Is it
want
the
I
same
want
size as the first place.
I want you
happy
to
face?
see the fourth place.
sad face.
Ooh.
That's
Everything.
the Comic Sans one. That's
I've
the
lived it. It's
Comic
not fun.
Sad.
First, second, and second, all happy faces, and the fourth one
The
not so
Max
happy.
one.
All right, I'm gonna bring out
I don't know if it's Max. It could be me.
It's Max.
the first
know.
second
Get Kwon in
placer.
fifth.
The first one to get second place
Hey!
is
I'm not
Valdes.
first.
Yes.
There you go, Valdes.
I'm not last.
You get your very...
It's in
look at-
cursive.
Look
Say
at
a
that
couple of words.
cursive
It's
font.
pretty.
But it's
you.
not perfectly centered. It's a little bit high on
Thank
the
you
paper.
So who
to
do you have to
Charlie,
thank
my
for
cat,
this?
for being really fluffy and cute.
What about
Thank
Bobby?
you.
What about Bobby?
Bobby is also really fluffy and cute.
All right. And the second place, the one who gets to congratulate their pet in order of ownership, is Cronny Wani.
Oh, that's perfect. Second place with Val the Rooney.
And
Tied.
and then I think
He needs to say a couple
I need to.
words.
I want to
you
thank
can say a couple of words. Yeah.
my pet Chicken. You know, even though she's in the Netherlands,
And
I
is
miss her
also
a
a
lot.
cat.
Also a cat. Yeah, her name's Kip, which means chicken. Miss her a lot. I hope she's doing well. Thank you for second place.
And now we'll do first place, and we will award the greatest predictor at the beginning of the summer season for the LCK.
The Rex to riches. The
And it
comeback of the
is-
century.
Look at Wolf's name not in Comic Sans'd.
Wow.
Isn't that beautiful? Wolf?
Yay!
Greatest comeback in the history of 2023 summer standings predictions. I just want to thank everyone who supported me, everyone who stuck with me, even after I got completely obliterated last time by putting Guangdong in like 4th place or whatever I did.
Not the Kwandong curse.
Common theme.
Well,
Fox, if you ever end up doing it, you know, just careful.
let's
So who
unveil.
got fourth?
Let's
Who
unveil.
could it have been?
Dun, dun,
Altus!
Altus, the fourth place Comic Sans'd.
So who is to blame for this besides yourself?
No, it's just me. It's just me. It's Scrimbucks. I can blame Scrimbucks for it as well.
Never buy
It's,
anything with the Scrimbucks, man.
It's maybe some thinking that perhaps KT were going to fall off the wagon, that they did not fall off. Quite a few disasters did happen. So for those who... Okay, just knocking things over now. This is how distraught
Yeah.
I am because of my
So?
fourth place and my Comic Sans.
Don't
I
blame
folded it back.
Valdes.
It's my fault.
I folded it back up. I should live this life, shouldn't I?
You should.
Yeah.
Maybe wear it for the rest of the episode so everyone can see. We have the perfect middle of the Packers. Then we have big winner Wolf with the comeback. And then we have Comic
Sans'd.
Saltus.
Yeah, Comic Saltus.
Salty.
Yeah,
Us.
yeah, salty us.
I love start of the season predictions. They're so much more fun than the regular predictions because there's no take. There's one little take back, but no real take backs.
Man, I got it
So-
so wrong.
Looking at what is the kind of the shock for everyone? It's just Kwangdong, right?
No, I wasn't too shocked by that, actually.
No, you
I had
were.
an eighth.
You did.
Yeah, no,
I saw that coming.
Valdez knew the Kwangdong situation.
Yeah.
Honestly, the weird thing is for me, we all put Bro at 10th because they had an abysmal first week. Like, we were like, oh, this is bad. But actually, like, because most of their season they just couldn't cross the finish line, but were really good. I'm like, wow, yeah, we did almost all of us put Bro in 10th. Like, that's quite surprising when you consider like how they bounced back and then beat Genji in the last week. Like, it feels like, yes, I understand why we did it, but I kind of forgot that we did that. So that's kind of a weird one to look at in the end of my mind.
I think any of the bottom teams it's still so close. Like, it literally came down to the final game. So
I'm
I
like-
think them being kind of all over the place does make sense.
I'm kind of thinking like if the G-Riz hadn't have been subbed in, my
It
humble
all
life
would've come
prediction would have been
together.
fine.
Yeah.
My humble life prediction would have been fine. But unfortunately, for me, the G-Riz came in, turned their whole season around, made it absolutely incredible.
Man, what a
Moved them to
gamer.
third place.
And made the league better for it.
Yeah,
He did.
Honestly, just like
And-
upgrading everything in every way.
Also, averaging the amount of weight that is possibly lifted, average like shot up, just by him existing in the league.
Yeah.
All right, so that is predictions out of the way. ATLUS and Comic Sans'd will remain here for the remainder of the episode just to taunt me and make me very upset. The fact that it's a bit jankily placed here as well, I think
perfect. It
only
works.
adds to the vibe that we have here. But there are playoffs that are going to be occurring in a couple of
Playoffs?
days' time for us. We're, in fact, heading straight into Challenger playoffs. Tomorrow for us, you guys are going to be getting this probably just before the playoffs do kick off. The Challenger playoffs are going to be happening on Monday as well. Hopefully you caught that because that is going to be also hype. But we now have
Yeah,
a
he's on KT.
whiteboard that has been prepared with the bracket. And we can utilize some of our pretty subpar prediction skills to try and have a look
We're just
at
awful.
exact. We are
Speak for
terrible.
yourself.
Yeah. We should. There's probably a website that we can go to consult on what the best predictions are going to be, but we're not going to do that because we're terrible at our jobs. What we're going to do instead is grab a whiteboard and try and suss out where we think the playoffs is going to go.
Gonna summon the whiteboard.
3, 2, 1.
Oh, I didn't do it. Wait, hold on. Sorry.
Right. Okay.
3, 2, 1. All right, and here it is. We found the whiteboard. We got it out of thin air, as we generally do. And now we have to allocate someone to do the writing in. It is going to be the gentleman with the Sharpie. I hope that's not a Sharpie. That is actually a whiteboard marker. Absolutely fantastic. Got to check to see whether it's permanent or not, because these things could be moving around. First,
with your hand.
the first cab off the
It's
rank.
it's like when you do the makeup. You
Yeah,
know,
but
when
your
you-
fingers were covering the
No, it's
logo.
fine. I can see.
Really glad that we got that in there. Okay. First off, we have to assume who these teams are going to choose, because that actually hasn't been locked in just yet. I believe the cutoff is about 9:30 p.m. this evening. We will probably get word during this episode as to exactly who is going to be chosen by which team. Humble Life Esports has a choice between DRX and T1. So therefore, they're probably going to choose DRX, unless Kingen and Zeka understand the barrel buff. Because, of course, he won them Worlds. And so, therefore,
But
they
he's
don't
already
want to
a
get
Worlds
hit
qualifier.
by the freight trains.
So
Doesn't need to win the playoffs.
So the argument would be that if you don't pick DRX, I actually think the reasoning would be that you want to try and take out T1, right? Like, that's like the only logic that would make sense, which I don't think teams ever do.
No.
No, that's.
I mean, that's just dumb.
But I
You
mean,
just
I
pick the weaker team.
But I could see like a world in which T1 level up throughout the course of playoffs, and so like cutting them off early, could be a way to stop them if you're afraid of them. But I think you've got bigger problems than T1 if you're trying to win the whole thing. You got to deal with KT and or Genji for the rest of the run. T1 bounced back in a big way against weaker opponents, obviously in the final week. Liv Sandbox, who lost to a Challengers team today, and who was their other opponent? Was it DRX?
It was
Kwangdong.
Kwangdong.
That's right. Yeah.
And it
So
was
Kwangdong
still
also with
1-2.
they broke a record though because it hadn't been since Solo One Prince that a team had gone completely lossless, completely winless in a round
it's
robin.
been 3 years.
Yay.
They won 2 games at least. But
2-18.
yeah, 2-18. So I think T1 has the potential though, even though those good looks for them were like Faker like memeing and playing Xerath and like laughing when like Jax is running at him, but I still think that they're probably the stronger team at their best, and why would you assume a team is not going to show up at their best?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that
I
it's
think
a
we
bit
all
of a
agree.
no-brainer.
T1 and
It's-
best
but I
of
think-
fives, just
don't risk
just
it.
don't tempt fate.
Or
And
tempt
play
fate.
him instead.
Yeah.
I'm going to lock
Remember
it in.
tempt? Remember tempt? Anyone remember tempt?
Oh, I remember Tempt. Do you remember always being hyped about Tempt being good, and then he was
Yeah.
never good ever? It was really
There's
sad.
a few
Some
other
moments.
recent players like that, but I'm not
Yeah.
gonna name any names.
Yeah.
So that leads us into the discussion. Who do we think is going to win? And I think
Hanwha Life.
the
is a-
Hanwha
is a
Life
lock.
one is very...
Yeah.
The other one.
The
I'm
other
vo-
one,
I'm
we
voting for T1.
need a lot. We need a lot of... Yeah, no,
I think if we were doing
a lot of
predictions
time.
for the World's Gauntlet,
But-
that's where DRX just runs the whole thing.
Yes.
But they
Not
want to
yet.
take a bit of a break, I
So-
think, before that. So they'll probably drop
It's-
out at the beginning of this.
Yeah, they're like, even with the fact that we meme around a lot and they looked great in their recent weeks, Crocodile has kind of looked up. That was against very different opposition than Zeka.
Yeah.
And the
Do we think it's
G-Rays.
like a clear 3-0 for Hanwha Life Esports, or do we think that it's going to be a bit of a
I
closer
think
series?
a 3-1 makes sense. I think one game because I actually think DRX's drafting has been pretty good, and I could see them like pull off like one of the Nocturne drafts that I think they've been pretty decent with, but I never see them winning the series.
Yeah, I agree. I think Podok has also had just random pop-off performances when he plays like Zeri, for example. So I think
Zaya.
Yeah, the Zaya's a big one.
like he just suddenly plays really well, and I think that's why they probably pulled him up over Duckdom just based on scrim results. So
Higher highs.
Hanwha Life
Yeah.
also not the cleanest team either. Like they're definitely the favorites, but I could see them slipping up or like
Yeah.
one weird draft where they get a little bit greedy for Zeka's champion pool and then like lose out on a strong jungle pick, for example.
G-Riz is nervous in his first game.
Yeah,
players
And
game.
then he stabilizes. And it's
Yeah.
3 in a row. Yeah, I could see the 3-1.
Yeah.
I could actually, yeah. There is like the angle that you can see for like, I mean, if it's actually going to be playoffs barrel, right? Like if we
Yeah.
get playoffs barrel,
So-
if we get some a sprinkling of spring barrel,
Alistair.
it's just like we are sprinting it.
If DRX win, like it must be like what, a draft diff and a Grizzly collapse.
Draft diff Grizzly, and maybe even like just a DRX
Bot lane as-
continuing
bot lane
like
as
to
well?
because DRX's understanding of the meta has looked pretty good, even if their individual players aren't
Yeah,
necessarily
and Hanwha
as
Life's
good.
kind of...
Yeah, and they're kind of all over the place. Yeah,
Hanwha seem a little bit reliant on their mechanics.
and
and
their
Zeka looked
80
a-
carry guy.
I mean, Zeka looked a little bit out of sorts when his champion pool was targeted, but
Oh, I don't know.
That was
The Ari
against-
looked
yeah,
pretty good.
That was against Genji, so I think that's kind of...
Oh, right. In that series?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's certainly some weaknesses here, but I don't think that DRX is a team that can properly exploit them. Like
No,
when I think
agree.
about all the mid laners that are in this tournament, Fade is not the one I think about when I think about like this guy could maybe put some pressure on Zeka. Old Fate, like when he was on Live Sandbox, when I think he was at his peak, like maybe that Fate, if he returns, could do something. Maybe playoffs form for him is different. We haven't really seen a whole lot of that, so yeah.
Well, we'll get to see that when he gets to Worlds.
Any Rascal playoff explosions?
I'm gonna be honest. I think
Rascal.
Rascal didn't have a great season. Like
No.
I feel like
No.
everyone's not everyone, but not everyone at this table. But like I think the fan narrative and like overall narrative is like, oh, Rascal is just like the solo kill machine still. I'm like, yeah, but like look at the numbers. Not
It's kind
really
of what
this
we were
season.
saying about Keen for a couple of years there. Where
Yeah.
we were just like, this guy is really good. We know he's really good. Like, he's
Where did
gonna
he
come in,
go?
He's got like a huge champion pool, and then he like falls flat a bunch of times. And we're like, but this isn't Keen. And like, yeah, kind of struggling on a middle of the pack team. It's a very similar feel.
Like
for
if you
Rascal.
say Rascal versus Kingen, like everybody instantly their brain is like Rascal, but then you think about it and you're like, not right now though.
It's also, I think Kingen is, outside of Keen, the most stable of the top laners that we still have. I think Kingen, it's really hard to find an opening against Kingen. Is my
I think
take
that
at
he'll
least.
never take an opening, though.
No, no. Kingen doesn't win you games outside of finals, apparently. So if they get there, then maybe.
Yeah.
But Kingen to me is outside of again Keen. Like between Doran, obviously has a lot of openings. Zeus, with how T1 has been playing recently, has been playing like insanely psycho, very far forward. So I think Kingen is just really hard to play against and try to like push through.
He's the new Doran in a weird way. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, no,
like
I
he's new
think
weak side Doran. You know,
Doran's lows were much lower.
Yeah.
That's what I sort of feel.
Kingen is just a very. He was great.
Stable.
Yeah, he's great with Zeka because Zeka is kind of the opposite. Where Zeka's peaks and valleys are like way more pronounced. So
Yeah.
I think they kind of balance each other.
and
But
he's not an emotional player either.
yeah. So but we're collectively in agreement.
Yes.
That's Hanwha. So
Yeah.
we're gonna
Well,
do we the cross?
No, we
for
we
DRX?
can't do the cross just yet. We're gonna. Oh, so you can
No,
maybe
'cause-
put the name underneath of who's going to win, and
Well,
then we
you could
can
just
work
cross
out
out the
who's
team,
going.
right?
Put the score.
Yeah, yeah.
The
Do the
score.
cross. Do the cross. I think that's fine.
3-1. I'd say we all kind of agree.
Yeah.
And then we can do that. But first we gotta that's the woo.
Spicy.
One thing that there's just an aside that I want to go into, which is really, really interesting. We meme often about DRX and the miracle run that they made, and we're like, if that 6th place team was to play again, like, are they going to be able to do it again? We don't know. Guess what? Every remaining player from that DRX roster is in playoffs in summer. That is still in the region. Isn't that kind of like? It's a bit ridiculous.
Pioshik is also still in playoffs.
Hey, there we go. But he's not in the
Yeah.
LCK playoffs.
No, true.
So like,
I just want to give him the shout out.
yeah.
KT was thinking about playing him, but you know, I think that's against the rules.
KT
They
almost
made,
put
they
him in.
made
yeah.
the right call.
Oh no! Let's not get into that debate on the PogState for this moment in time. Oh dear.
No, this next one is way more, way less risk. Right?
Yeah.
T1 T plus.
So I think that this is like not even close, in my mind. But I'd like to
For
hear
which
from you guys.
team?
Yeah, that's the
You
question.
can make that statement and just
I
not
hope
say
you
anything.
Get 3 zeros for both sides. I don't think that's possible though. With the amount of volatility between these two teams and their current form, I feel like this happens pretty often between 4th and 5th place. Although it didn't happen in spring, where we were all pretty like, yeah, DK's going to take this. It's going to be easy, and then Hanwha Life just beat them. And
It
we're
was
like,
a
what?
3-1, right? But
Yeah.
pretty Hanwha favorite.
So that's
DK
that's
kinda just fell
I
apart.
feel exactly like this could happen again, where like everyone's like, yeah, of course D plus is better. Like T1's still recovering from Poby, and then T1 just show up and it's like just absolutely smash
I
D
think
plus.
T1's going to win.
I think T1's going to 3-0. I think there's no chance for D+.
D plus looked totally collapsed. Like
Yeah.
everybody, especially Showmaker in their last series.
His
you
Jace
can't
looked
do
bad.
that.
I
Showmaker's
also-
Jace looking bad is like, that's the first time I've seen that.
But
So, I was just gonna say like back to the original like relation to the last one, where the last time it felt like, oh, okay, anything could happen though. Like we were all kind of like, yeah, D plus should win this, but then we're like, but what if like Hanwha overperformed? Because last season Hanwha had these random really high highs, and I think like T1 is kind of like that in that this season they've had some really great games, like their series in first round robin against Genji, where it was a very close series. It was really exciting, and T1 played, I think, at that series like probably some of their peak League of Legends. And then at the end, even before Poby came in, Faker had hands problems. Team wasn't all on the same page. But I also agree with you. I'm surprised you guys all think T1 is going to win. My thing is, I think the biggest weakness of D plus right now is that they don't snowball. They look like a headless chicken, like running around, like they have no idea what to do next. Whereas T1 is like one of the most, when Faker's on the roster, one of the most decisive teams, even if they make mistakes. And I think that makes it a really bad matchup for D plus, because T1, the shot calling is crisp, the turns are fantastic. Sometimes you have lane problems, and sometimes like the team fighting gets a little bit iffy, like someone gets out of position, but they won't happy feet. Like they will make calls, they will make decisive decisions, and D plus have been a little bit split in that regard.
Who did D plus did face Genji and Hanwha this week, right?
Not Genji and Hanwha. It was a
Nongshim,
weaker
sorry.
team. Nongshim.
It was so but last week they faced Genji, then they faced Nongshim,
Yeah.
who they 2-0 didn't look great against, and then they faced Hanwha. I actually like.
They
I
looked
probably
against
they
Hanwha,
did look really boom, but I also think that T1 faced off against Kwangdong. So when Fakers come back, they faced off against Kwangdong and a Sandbox
who just lost to a
who
challenger
just lost
team,
to
yeah.
a challengers team. And like this last week have just looked really, really rough. So this one is really, really weird because it depends so much. Because I do think that Showmaker, even with how rough he looked, is going to be not as big of a liability. And I also think that Faker individually still is clearly dealing with his injury and just doesn't look... like the Sandbox series, we saw that, right? Like, what do you want, like... Him, Owner, and Carryout went
they
like...
lost to Live Sandbox as well. They lost the game.
Yeah.
If you remember.
Yeah.
Teddy just one-shotting
They
Faker,
went,
basically.
what, like 3 or 4-20 in KDA. Like, it was really, really rough. And I think that D+ look a little bit worse because they play against two teams that were better than them, and they have always not looked good at that.
I mean, they 2-0'd Homolife the round before. That's the
I know.
thing. Is that it looks like they're on the downturn and
Homolife
T1 are
weren't
looking on
really
the upturn.
Yeah.
On a good spot at
Homo
that
Life,
time.
that was just after Grizzly debuted, and then he had to face Canyon. So, like, I think that was a little bit the timing not working out for Hanwha. Don't get me wrong. I don't trust D+, right? Like, I don't trust D+, but I don't trust either of these teams. I think that on both teams, we've had Kana and Deft have been great, and the rest of the team, depending on the game, look either from somewhere. I do hope they play Kellen because I think the Bible
Me
experiment.
too.
If it was Bible the entire year, I actually could see this work, but it isn't. And he's just not LCK ready. Like, his laning is just too bad, and against Guma and Carry, you can't afford that.
The thing is, like, his laning doesn't even look that much improved from last time, like last year.
No,
where he subbed in, right?
No, I know, but I think that if you get a year in the LCK, it can look very different from just getting subbed in halfway through this split, right?
Especially with Gorilla behind you, right?
Yeah. Also, after getting pulled up from a challengers team where you were almost undefeated. So I hope they play Kellen. But it's really funny because you have Kana and Deft are the only ones that are stable. And then on T1, you have Zeus and Guma, who are the only ones that are stable. So I think you can predict anything on this. I think you can predict a 3-0 for either team. And I could see a scenario in which it would happen. And I could predict... I think most likely it's just a 3-2 slogfest with all of us and all the fans going like, ah!
I think if D+ win the first game, it could be a long series. I think if D+ lose the first game, it's a 3-0. Because I think that, like, on top of the fact that you've got a D+ that have been struggling, their main opponent that they've struggled to win against is themselves. When their confidence is down, they just look completely hopeless.
I kind of think that's somewhat true for both of these teams, and like my initial reaction is like I want to say it's going to be a 3-2. Thinking about the history of these two teams and how close they played each other in the past, and like the caliber of players on these rosters, it feels like they both have some issues right now, so it should be 3-2. But I think the overwhelming issue that both teams has is like whoever wins game one wins 3-0. Like it almost feels like it's going to be like that 100%. Well. Like the first game is so important.
Because both of these teams are dealing with huge mental issues, right? Like, it's so obvious that without Faker, T1 were worse than Headless Chickens, I feel. DK, I don't really know what's going on with them, but a lot of changes and even coaching changes, and it feels like it's hitting at exactly the wrong time, like right at the end of the season, right when you're losing confidence, losing to really good teams that you potentially should be competitive with, but you're not, and you're just getting crushed. So... if DK come in, they've got Kellen, they win that first game, they're feeling good. Maybe they can go on a streak because maybe then, Owner and Carry kind of go off and kind of do whatever they've been doing for the last month as well. And then, it doesn't matter who's in the mid lane at that point. I think they're going to kind of fall apart. So I am leaning T1 because I think that, they're ramping up. They defeat Kwangdong, which is basically a freebie. But that was a great first match. And they go against Live Sandbox and they struggle a little bit, but... maybe now they build up that confidence, and if we see anything like what we saw out of DK against Homolife Esports and even Nongshim, I don't think we're going to have a very competitive Dom or D+.
The more I think about it, the Kellen Bible issue is like, you lose lane with Bible, like 100%, that's a huge problem. And his shot calling hasn't been like up to what it's kind of been hyped towards.
And how are you supposed to know what it even means anyway, right? Like, we don't hear the comms.
If you have Kellen coming back in where he's like a little bit off kilter because he's been in and out of the team, probably doesn't feel great, he's been like calming with the challengers roster a little bit, then like with Bible or without, T1 have the better shot calling, but with like clear, obvious shot calling hole and no Bible voice yelling, which could be good or bad, who knows? It seems like the coaching staff thinks it maybe one day will be really good. Like, I feel like it goes T1 either way in these scenarios, specifically for, like, Guma carry a strength in lane and then T1's decisive shot calling. Win fakers here. Always have to add that caveat. So it's like, I want to say, based on everything we've just said, I'm like, yeah, just put the T1 3-0 down. But if you just see that without listening to everything we've just said, everyone's going to be like,
Some
what?
people will.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I feel like it's like the most like logical thing to write down. I almost feel.
Because
And that's crazy, but it's like logical.
No, I'm
And we're
still
favoring T1.
I'm still leaning D+, but it is to me very close, and I think the series just inherently extremely volatile. And I think that the one thing that is would make me favor T1 is that owner specifically against Canyon has actually been generally great, but outside of that, owner and Carrier have just not been good this split at all, right?
I think Kerry has been. I think to say Kerry hasn't been good at all is a little bit dishonest. I think he has been very inconsistent. He has made some he's had some very peculiar games. Let's say.
There was a couple of weeks there where he was really off, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Alistair game comes to mind.
Was a little bit of a slump, and after that he's kind of been getting to that inconsistent space where like sometimes he looks good, but other times it's like, ooh, we don't want to see that again. So
I mean, the way that I think about it is that the whole thing is it's a trend comparison, right? The trend for T1 is that they're coming up from pretty low down, and I think the trend for D+ is coming down from relatively high up. That I think that the lines are at about here right now, and I think you've got T1 that have come up a little bit further and D+ that have sunk a little bit further. And my issue is coming into the series, do I have confidence that D+ are going to be able to make winning plays? And I just haven't seen D+ make winning plays outside of win lane, win game. And win lane, win game is like, it's too hard. Well, yeah, but that's what Canyon does, right? He wins the jungle, wins every lane, and then wins the game. Yeah. And I don't see that necessarily being a solid game plan that's going to be able to pick you up a best of 5. And I think that like what we've seen from T1 makes them look hungrier to me.
If like Showmaker's current form was similar to Zeka's current form, where he's like trending upward, and you're like, oh man, this guy's like, it's good champion pool form. It seems like he's kind of figured out his niche here, and he's playing very confidently. That I could be like, oh yeah, Showmaker could abuse Faker's lack of consistency right now. Return to play, hand still hurts, still injured, according to their interviews, right? Like feels comfortable to play, but like he's not 100%. And then if Showmaker was the angle, I'm like, oh yeah, Canyon plus peak Showmaker versus recovering Faker, like absolutely. But I just feel like Showmaker hasn't inspired me in the last few weeks of play to make me believe he could do it.
Yeah.
So what do we do? 3-1? 3-2?
It's a 3-0.
3-1.
3-0, whichever way.
I feel like 3-0 is the most logical, but like it feels weird to write that. Like,
yeah,
because it
could be either
really
team.
close between these two teams.
it also makes you feel like you could look stupid if it doesn't come out. But like I think like based on everything we've said, I mean,
if D+
based on
is
what
going
the three
to
of us
win,
have said,
yeah.
I mean, Chronicle has some different opinion, but like based on what the three of us have said, like I feel like it should be a 3-0. But
This is
I
a
do think
democracy.
there is a 20% chance that D+ just comes out and does make us look stupid, right? Like,
And if they win game 1,
they just
and
trash
T1
him.
go boom,
Yeah.
probably D+ are going to 3-0.
But I also think that that's the only way that D+ wins, is if it looks like catastrophically one-sided. Because that's the only way they get enough confidence to actually follow through with the series.
So, putting it in?
Say 3-2.
it's okay for Mao to also say like, by the way, I don't think this is necessarily what's going to happen.
But that's fine.
'Cause
right?
last time
we go majority vote. We did
And
this
we-
last time as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
last
yeah.
time I thought
I-
T1
it's-
was going to pick KT, and you guys disagreed, and we put the other one up, and then I ended
Yeah.
up being right. So Chronicle could be the one who's right this time.
True.
Yeah, it's the majority goes. So 3-0.
Yep.
All right.
3-0 X team is what we're going to go with. I also am going to predict that no matter who wins this series, they're immediately going to lose. So
I think there is a bit of a tier list where KT and Genji are on tier 1 and Home Life Esports are on tier 2.
They're in their own,
And then DK
yeah.
is on tier 3.
Yeah.
And T1's on tier 4 now, and DRX are on tier 5. That's how I would.
So
I think tier 3 can be both DK and T1.
Not anymore.
No?
Not for me, no. I don't.
Wait,
kinda
so
down
T1,
with
but T1's about to 3-0 the DK.
Yeah.
I actually,
that's just
yeah.
the way the series is going to go.
So-
It's- I don't know.
That's the way Brendan's tier lists go.
yeah. So
Tier 4 is better than
So
tier
let's talk
3.
about who KT will pick. You guys just think they pick T1 every time?
Yeah. Well, if they 3-0 and look really good, I think they still get chosen, though.
I agree.
Because if Home Life Esports win and they look good, I don't know. There's a lot that can go on because there is such a huge mental game with DK versus T1, but then there's also the mental game of Grizzly is very, very new, and if Home Life Esports are looking shaky at all against DRX, that might be a swift pickup where it's like we can beat Home Life Esports and T1 seem like an unknown entity where like if they're on the come up and they just 3-0 DK and we have our opinions, but like what will the team think if they're like, oh, we played against DK and they were really strong, so and T1 just crushed them, like we can't pick T1. That's too scary. So we're going to pick Home Life Esports. So,
well, also, of course,
this all
depends
means
on the
I'm
form.
really lost and I have no idea.
It also depends on the form of Hanwha that we
Yeah,
see against
exactly.
DRX. Like, if Hanwha struggle against
If they look
DRX and
shaky.
T1 3-0, then like maybe you're like, oh,
Exactly.
okay, like that's a little bit weird. But since we don't expect that, I wouldn't assume that. But
I think KT are always picking T1.
the
I
one thing
agree.
I'm scared about for Hanwha as KT is Zeka. Like, Zeka could outlane BDD. I feel like BDD's engages, his team fights, his like clutch moments are insane. But Zeka might just outlane him, and then Grizzly gets to play a little bit better around having that lane prio if Zeka gets the champs he wants. And that's what I'm scared about if I'm KT. So I'd say probably they're going to pick T1 because Faker isn't a strong laner right now based on his current condition, and BDD can get through that part. And I think Keen versus AS, you feel very happy, and the bot lane, you feel happy. Viper versus aiming is kind of like a little bit more contentious potentially, so I think it's a pretty safe bet that KT pick
I'd say
it's more
likely, yeah.
T1.
I also think that if we look at like the last few years, they just always pick the lowest ranked team.
Yeah.
That's actually my whole reason. I think they just like, okay, this team was the weakest going into playoffs. We pick them.
Yeah. And also, like, you think about KT haven't been challenged by T1 all season. Like,
Yeah, not
the
even
first
remotely.
telecom war even with Faker looked not even a little bit close.
No.
And even when T1 were the massive favorites in that telecom war in the playoffs last time, T1 almost lost to KT.
And there is also something to be said that actually Hanwha has been the only team that has been able to challenge KT. Because don't forget, Gen G got 2-0. Now, I do think that Gen G is better, and I don't think they would get 3-0 if it was a best of 5. But what we have seen is that KT was able to handily dispatch of Gen G. Obviously not in week 2, but that was a series with a lot of caveats.
Static shift.
Static shift. I shout out again, by the way, if you didn't see it.
Oh, the
DRX, their
DRX, yeah.
tweet. Check it out. It's amazing. Has
Aiming with the shaved head and the
and
static shiv on
yeah.
his forehead. Oh, my God.
Which I guess is also an Avatar reference, maybe? I don't know. It was just great. But I think that KT specifically will just not pick Hanwha because Gen G have also obliterated Hanwha most times. KT expects to win no matter what. So if you can have Gen G deal with Hanwha, you pick a team that against any good team hasn't looked good in a very long time. I think it makes too much sense. And even if they do, if T1 do dunk on D+, which again, I could definitely see, I don't think it really changes the optics because of I think a lot of the teams will rate
no
them
matter
well as
which
well.
team it is out of T1 and D+, that's the team that's going to be chosen by KT, and then Gen G will be up against Home Life Esports or Beryl.
Because
Depends.
if DK wins, probably T1's going to look really weak. So then DK look less strong,
Yeah.
maybe, in a
No, I
sense.
agree. Yeah.
Like, they should look really strong because they 3-0, but also maybe the teams are like, well, T1 didn't really show up, so we still think DK is really weak, and we'll just take them on. Or vice versa. if
Yeah,
T1 wins.
I mean, I just think of these three teams, like Hanwha is the scariest. And I mean,
Yeah,
DRX
just
is a
don't pick
meme,
'em.
but like
keep your
Put it in.
keep your life
So DRX
alive.
isn't the scariest until the world's
Yeah,
gauntlet.
until the gauntlet.
Yeah.
Not here in these playoffs.
No, not just yet.
So another telecom war.
Yeah,
Yeah.
another telecom war in round 2 as well. Whew.
Yeah, but the telecom war hasn't actually been good.
Lowercase.
Still a telecom war.
I don't know.
esports, you lowercase the e. Come on, we've been
Yeah.
through this.
Oh.
If you got to the S, then that would be uppercase, because you capitalized the S.
I don't know where we're all on the lowercase or uppercase esports debate. I just went
There we
back to
go.
the.
I just think it's hilarious.
I just went back to like we don't have to. Do
I
it.
like apostrophe sports. I think it looks
What about E dash sports?
also fine.
What about
Big
e
fan.
semicolon sports?
That's
No,
actually
that's
the best one.
completely ridiculous.
No, that's
E.
cultured.
Wolf is
Sports.
lost.
Do you do
Yeah.
E apostrophe male? No, you don't.
Yes,
No,
I do.
but e semicolon mail all the time. Yeah. E-comma
So-
mail.
KTT1.
3-zip. Boom! Smack him down.
Yeah, I'm
Like,
kind
I think
of.
it's gonna look worse than the,
I don't even think we need to
the
analyze it.
Saturday beatdown that we had.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So-
I mean, like, I'll analyze it a little bit because, like I said before, I think BDD versus Faker, a good matchup for BDD right now. Like, I know historically it hasn't always been, but right now I'd say it feels pretty good. And then Keen versus AS Keen seeming more consistent, obviously. And then you have Cuz versus a weak owner at the moment. And then bottom lane, I think that's your strong point, honestly, weirdly enough, in this matchup for T1, but even then, I don't think it's enough. Like, if you just, like, kind of go from top to bottom on the map and look at it and think about it, you're like, nah, no, probably 3-0, right?
KT's
So-
top side of the map is just too strong.
Yeah, so we
I
should.
also think Lehens preys on the mentally struggling
He does.
teams.
He does.
He
He
like
thrives
like,
off
a
it.
Dementor
Yeah.
or something.
yeah,
right?
basically
Like,
he
I mean, he's
senses
happy.
weakness and then he goes to that lane and
Yeah.
destroys them so that the turmoil within the
Feeds on
team
the
So-
like eats them
darkness, yeah.
alive.
Just as a how would T1 win? I just think it's fun to talk about, like, because of the D plus Humble Life situation,
They steal a Baron.
free like
3
five-
games.
Okay.
They have to steal 3 Barons.
I think I have a more realistic. I think I have
the
a more
ball. It's the bot
realistic
lane,
answer.
right? If anything.
KT don't respect them and actually draft poorly or
Yeah.
showboat. Like, I actually think that's the more realistic
they do
answer.
have a tendency to do that. from
Recently,
time to
they have
time.
been doing that a lot. So
Is there? And
Please be
I
respectful,
think
KT.
Playoffs, though.
I think I do want to bring this up. Is there a chance that KT go full KT and completely choke it? I don't think this
No.
is
No,
right.
not
Like,
in
I
this
don't
game.
think it's there.
They'd have to do that
Maybe
in
in finals against Genji.
But like
Yeah.
looking
or in winter
at
finals potentially.
so and then I'm mostly looking, and I'm not saying that they would look horrible, but just worse than they have. Like for Christopher Lahans, I'm not too worried for obvious reasons because he literally comes off of winning last year and looked great in finals as well. For BDD, I also wouldn't be worried. But then for aiming, Cuz and Keen, like how are we feeling? I think it's important
Aiming
to at
is the one
least
to worry about.
I think Cuz
Yeah.
as well, because we know that Cuz can look great until he looks
invisible.
Yeah.
When
And,
he's
like,
confident,
not even
he's
invisible,
fantastic.
like an actual liability. Like he has, even there have even been series. more
I like
recently.
I've been fully converted. I trust KT. I think they're the best team in the LCK at the moment. But I do think that it's important to at least go over some of the like outlier scenarios where we see a really big.
Yeah. I think a
swap.
collapse could happen at any point. It's KT.
I mean, legit, I think it happened in the lower bracket finals for spring. Like, I actually think KT could have come back and won that series against Genji, and they had
Yeah.
control of the game they lost.
They got
with the
Doran
Ezreal.
really hard,
Yeah.
didn't they?
And
Yeah.
they absolutely could have beaten Genji and upset them, which would have at the time been like insane upset and like, oh my god, I can't believe KT's going to the finals. But they choked there and they messed up their win con and aiming got picked and it was like kind of a disaster. It's happened before, even very recently, but I don't think it's going to happen against T1. Like
Yeah, I
T1
don't- I
will
don't
choke
think so.
first, unfortunately, in this
if
case.
it
And even
goes-
if it's D plus, like D plus, it's the same scenario.
Yeah.
But if it goes to a game 5 between T1 and KT, who do you think takes it?
KT, 100%.
KT.
Okay. Yeah.
I
I mean, I'm with
we-
you.
Like-
yeah.
Present me with a game between these two teams, and I will predict KT to win.
Yeah, no, that's
I mean, they
very
were
reasonable.
17
Chronicle's like,
One.
what happens if KT's like 3,000 gold down at 12
So,
minutes? Like,
KT
Atlas is like, KT still wins.
Pretty much,
we've
my
seen-
hair would be safe.
We've seen
KT,
We've seen him do it.
The one series they lost was the Shiv series. They were 17-1. I think right now they're in a really good mental state. I don't think they're in a state to choke unless something goes wrong in
No, I
winter
agree.
finals, and then they like meet again in the finals, and then they're like, that would be the only time. I don't think this is ever the series where KT mentally choke.
so
I just
3-0,
wanna
right?
Give them enough credit. For
Yeah.
No,
what
I'm
they've done.
I'm with you guys. I just
No, it's,
I
it's
like
Let's
good
go
to
to
have the
conversation
discussion.
more interesting
T1 in
against
best of
Hanwha and Genji,
fives?
though.
yeah.
I was ready to go forward with zero conversation at all, so I think this was much better. All right, what, have
Maybe
we
just
got
draw
our
a
cases
down
correct?
arrow on them, like, or something. I don't know.
Okay, so Genji, Hanwha Life Esports. This is a really cool one because I think this is a battle between my two
3-0.
MVP votes, which is a bit of a,
I'm not kidding.
a shout out to what we're going to talk about later, which is some of the All Pro votes that
Your
we're
MVP
going to have.
Grizzly, right?
Yeah.
Remember when
Grizzly
we-
second Faker? Yeah.
Mm.
As a unit, overall, not 100%, but kind of collectively thought, oh, maybe Hanwha beats Genji in week 9. And then some
Don't worry,
Arnold
Arnold.
guy.
I am going to predict Gen G will win. I am 100% going to do that.
But then Gen
I
G
have no
did
idea
not
what you
lose
guys
to
are talking
Hanwha, actually.
about.
In fact, Hanwha got
Yeah.
obliterated by
X.
Yeah. I want to make it perfectly clear that I like every time they play.
I think there's
100%
I
Gen G.
think there's a
I've learned.
conversation
I learned my lesson.
we can have about why Gen G will probably beat them and not just because they beat them recently. I think Chovy, like the Zeka angle where it's like, oh, Zeka beats a lot of the other smart mid laners who make really good team fight decisions. Like, Zeka's like strength in that he's a strong laner. I mean, is great and all, but like he's actually second tier to Chovy in this regard. So like that's not a strong point for you.
I think the jungle gap in this series
Thank you.
might be bigger than any other series we see. Peanut is just so incredibly on point nowadays. And we already saw what he did in that series. Like, we have some really relevant data. And we were even talking about, maybe Grizzly has some trouble in playoffs. I think come this time around, he already has that mental block of, oh, God, Peanut already gapped me. What am I going to do this time? And maybe he gets some confidence, but I think Peanut's going to come into this one and they're going to be happy to face off against Hama Life Esports. They're going to be really confident. I think Peanut's just going to crush him. I don't think it's going to be
Yeah,
close.
I think he'll be
And I
okay
love
against.
Grizzly.
I think he'll be okay against Croco, but
Yeah. No, I agree. Well,
this could be a different story.
yeah, no, I did like the.
I mean, when
DRX
they
drops.
lose to DRX, it's going to be like really
True.
awkward. Yeah.
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 I love that you keep putting
D
it
plus
in,
sends their
just to have-
regards.
yeah.
Can Gen G beat DRX, though? Like,
I mean, if DRX wins the first best of 5, you best believe I'm riding that hype train.
No, I'm with Valdes. I think that Peanut, even though obviously KT really got the better of them, I think Peanut, when he gets to kind of run the game, is probably the number. Like, Kenyon wins games the hardest and like carries the hardest, but I think Gen G looks the best when Peanut gets either ahead or a little bit of breathing
Yeah.
room. And against Grizzly, I think he will. I could see a 3-1, but I'd probably be predicting a 3-0. Even though I think Hanwha is a really good team, because I think that Hanwha match up well into KT. Don't think they'll win, but I think that match up well.
Exactly.
And I think that KT match up well into Gen G, and then Gen G match up well into Hanwha. Right? I think that Hanwha
Yeah.
Life is not quite on the same tier as the other two, but I think they could like try and fight a little bit with KT. But I think Gen G stylistically just doesn't work for them because Hanwha just don't do enough, I think, to kind of keep Gen G down. And then I think Gen G's team fighting is still exceptional. I think KT are just so good at the moment at snowballing.
I 100% agree.
So I think
I think as
it's
well.
3-1. I think Hanwha's good. They might
Yeah.
get a game.
And looking at the bottom lane as well, like Hanwha do like to play through bottom lane quite a lot, but I think Pays and Delight have just looked so solid, sort of
Delight
like a brick
especially.
wall. Like you can't go
Giga
through
Chad.
that. Yeah, Delight. That's another shout out to our all pro votes. So we are going to
3-1?
put in 3. We can Andy that.
Yeah,
I
throw
reckon we
him
can
a
Andy.
bone.
You guys can. Yeah,
We
you
can
guys
three.
can do that.
I
You
3-0.
think- you think
I think it's a
3-0?
3-0, but like,
Yeah.
it's fine to put one in. I mean, why not?
I
I don't feel as strongly about this one as the other one.
is
So
good.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think side selection plays any part in that particular
no, I
series.
don't think so either.
And so now we get the rematch, Hama Life Esports versus T1, in theory. That's a fun one. The classic can they do it again type angle.
So that kind of creates a pretty depressing bracket, right? Because what's going to happen is we're going to have KT's going to beat Gen G, and then Hanwha Life's going to beat T1, and then Gen G's going to stomp Hanwha Life again, and then
we get
And
the
then Gen
rematch.
G are going to crush KT in the finals. Because KT, that's where they choose to...
that's oh god, I
They wait until the last moment.
every
Give us the
timeline
most
has been
possible.
discovered.
every single KT fan just like is like, oh, I just woke up in cold
I think-
sweats.
I
And
think,
score's
like-
going to be there.
How well? Like, I think if KT is not tested at all in this bracket, especially even by Gen G the first time, like if they crush Gen G the first time, that almost makes me like feel like 100% they lose the second time.
They
You know
lose
what
the-
I mean?
they lose the finals?
I think
Yeah.
they actually have to be tested in some way. They're kind of like RNG in that way. Like the tougher the bracket they go through to get to their international tournament, like the better they do at said international tournament. Like if they're not tested in some way here, I am worried about them in the finals. But I do think that our path for the Gen G KT double game feels pretty realistic at this point in time.
I would be shocked if it's not a double KT Genji, like
Yeah.
upper bracket and grand final.
This season is just very tier listy again.
It is,
Like
yeah.
KT and Genji on a very
It's
similar
like
tier.
T1 Genji
and
last
then there's
time.
a big drop off. And you
Yeah.
get to Hanwha Life Esports. Hanwha Life Esports are great, but they're not KT or Genji. At this
I'm
You know
hoping
what's-
that there'll be really good best of fives though between Genji and KT. I'm hoping that it's not going to be a repeat of the 2-0 we saw.
I don't think it will be. I
know
think that
what's-
Genji were really rough on that day, and I do
Yeah.
think that they should match up better in best of 5.
What's really interesting is we talked about like the mid laners here, like BDD. Maybe he could, be abused by Zeka, but he won't be abused by Faker and his like lane weaknesses. But like, for example, like Zeka could maybe actually punish BDD, and Zeka also has really good team fighting. But I feel like BDD actually kind of matches up well into Chovy because yes, he may struggle against him at lane, but I feel like he's more decisive in team fight setups and like
Would agree.
his angles are like smarter, so to speak. Like his like geometry understanding is like
Chovy
better
does
for
have
his.
his moments though.
He does.
Some
Like
of
he had
his
that
Yone
crazy
games.
like Azir game where he like got the sweep under the
Azir,
turret.
He had the
He's-
Galio into
I-
literally
Chovy's pretty good.
BDD.
I would,
There's Tristana.
yeah, really.
Looking good.
But I
I-
think this season like BDD's been more clutch.
Yeah.
So I feel like the Chovy like Chovy actually could prove like that we're wrong, and it would be like really sick to
He
see
might.
it. Like that's the exciting part of that winners matchup for me, especially the first time they meet up. Because otherwise, I feel like if that doesn't happen, like Aiming can match Pays, and Keen can match Doran, obviously, and then Peanut like has to do some really heavy lifting. But the team fights were the problem with Genji in all of the losses they took against KT thus far.
And if spring hadn't happened, I wouldn't have a lot of faith in Genji to overperform. But now I'm like, I could see KT win. KT are, I think, obviously the front runner. As we did just hear that Hanwha Life chose DRX, which is awesome because that means our bracket is good.
Confirms
so
it. Yep.
Okay,
Awesome.
good to hear.
But given how well they played last time around, which was an overperformance, I think internationally, would I trust this Genji? Probably still no. Given what we've seen
Hey,
in recent years.
Not against an LPL
well,
team.
they'll make semis. Like this is how
Yeah,
spoiled we are.
that's
We're
the
like,
amount
yeah.
of not
Oh, they'll
trusting
They
only
you.
didn't
make-
win finals.
yeah. Ugh. So, but I do think that domestic overperformance I could see. What would really be a shocker to me though is if it's not KT or Genji that wins. After last spring, where T1 was such a heavy favorite and Genji ended up winning, I'm like, those two teams were always on one tier. The same is the case now. I think KT are the
What about
favorites.
the Viper Daejeon.
So that's actually that's what.
it's
Oh.
Daejeon.
So it's Daejeon.
It's Daejeon.
That's what I wanted to ask you guys. Are you with me that like who do you think would win if it's not KT or Genji? Because it's so in my mind it's like
It's
it's
gotta
like
be Hanwha, right?
it's
the
well
tier
it's like
list. It's the tier
KT 60%, Genji 30%. Who's the 10%?
if
T1.
if
I'm
D-
actually I'm over Hanwha. I'm
Hanwha
actually
Life
on that.
Esports.
I'm on the
I'm
D
with- I'm
plus.
on-
I think if D plus actually win, so
Oh.
like if it's the D plus
outta
timeline,
here.
I think
Any
they're
DRX
actually
DRX,
they're
where are
actually
you?
scary. Like,
DRX fans.
like no, DRX
Barrel.
has to be fourth seed, so they have to
Oh.
get through the world's gauntlet.
Whenever,
Gotcha.
last time,
Come on.
Remember when DRX got to the World's Gauntlet was when we basically just decided we weren't going to talk about them. We were like, yeah, we're not even going to discuss this. It's like either Live Sandbox or KT. Like we don't even we're not
Yeah.
like, let's not even waste anybody's
Now we're
time. Like
talking way
I'm
too
like we're
much
doing
about
the
it.
same thing.
Yeah.
Like let's just not talk about DRX at all. I'm like,
It's actually ruined like every conversation for like the next 3 years. Because remember the miracle. It's like
I
it's
mean,
like
Barrel's
This
going to
just
win worlds
proves that
again.
the
Like it's
SK
happening.
Analysts are just really bad at predicting.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that it's
Any
it's
tour.
also that is the best storyline and the most unlikely in like the history of the sport. So we should probably
Alright,
not be.
I'm gonna ask a really controversial question, and like, no one
Give
has
it
to
to me.
answer individually. But do you guys think Genji won Spring more, or did T1 lose and choke in Spring more? Like, did Genji really like rise to the occasion or
think
win really
Genji
hard,
won.
or did
Yeah,
T1
I'm
fall
a-
apart?
I'm a
Because I think
rise to the
that is,
occasion guy.
if you believe that they rise to the occasion, I think you can believe that they could beat KT in the finals. Like, I think if that's the side you take, because I also take that side. I think Pays had a really good series. Doran popped
Doran.
off. He like
Doran was
absolutely,
just absolutely.
He was robbed
like
of
that
MVP,
weekend.
to be
That
honest.
weekend,
Finals,
he
yeah.
was,
was
a
robbed.
god.
He was
Yeah.
robbed of MVP, but you know,
We were livid about that.
yeah. You should have seen Hooney, man.
Pace voter.
Yeah.
But,
there were
uh,
some Pays voters. Yeah.
There were a majority
some,
of Pays
I-
voters, as it
some
turns
narrative
out.
voters. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, it,
Narrative Nance.
And
Yeah,
and
Nancy's-
honestly, we shouldn't pile on again because after that happened, we piled on really.
It's
hard,
okay,
so
it
we
happens.
don't
I
need
remember
to.
a very spirited discussion afterwards. It was like me and Orcs against the four of like you guys
Yeah,
and Hooney.
everybody
Yeah.
else.
It was a good discussion.
Yeah,
we had
the
fun.
entire Huayshik was yeah.
No,
Anyway.
that was a discussion about QMax Brom the entire way back because remember Carrier played.
Well, we
Brom.
have
that was
learned
all- oh, yeah,
again
that was on the way
was the
there.
start.
That was on the
Emacs
way
is
there.
actually
and then
that
yeah.
actually is the way, and it actually won a game like yesterday. So
Yeah, that was how Bro
Anyway-
beat Genji.
I think that like I think a lot of people actually think T1 just choked that finals. I think a lot of people believe that because we kind of unanimously predicted them to win and stuff like that. But I do think Genji actually overperformed, and maybe we see that again. That's the only way I feel like Genji win this is if they actually play better than what they've shown. And I think if I had to like point at one player who I feel like he needs to rise up, it's weirdly enough Chovy actually. I feel like his team fighting has to be as good as we know it can be.
He
Because
needs to
that's
be
the
the
one
main
thing BDD
character
has
again.
over
He
him.
hasn't been the main
Yeah.
character for a really long time.
Exactly. He's laning really well. Like he's also not just like side laning and not coming to team fights. You know, it's not that problem, Chovy. It's just that when he does show up to the team fights, like maybe 7 out of 10 times he can absolutely get it done, but it needs to be like 10 out of 10 times he can do it. Because BDD right now in those critical moments, it's like 10 out of 10 times. he's
yeah,
gonna team fight it.
BDD's clutch right now is kind of reminding me of 2021 Worlds BDD.
Yeah.
Where,
Well, the
like-
first part of that series, anyways.
Yeah. I mean,
We're
I mean,
not
I
talking
think-
about that one single game.
I actually think that BDD was like at least on the Genji side by far the best player in that entire
I
tournament.
think he was the best mid laner at the tournament.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of
so
people
good.
will
offense to
not
that.
give him credit for that because he choked at the end, but like, nah. At his best, he was the best.
And the whole tournament as well. Like,
Yeah.
man, he looked so good.
Yeah, I can make arguments for why like T1 if they go full back and they get the narrative arc and they get the power up and Faker's injury is not a problem.
I don't think there's any way T1 are
I mean I don't
pushing.
I
don't
wanna
think so.
entertain it.
Happen.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I don't really want to entertain it.
No, same
like,
for
I
D+.
think that like I can talk about the conversation like between T1 and D+ with like, oh yeah, I think T1 can win. I think from that point on, I just don't think that there's a way.
It's only Hanwha, right? Where we get like the meta really works out.
The
out
way
of the
I was going to what Wolf was talking about, and I think it's really interesting having the discussion about mid laners because the reason for me that Hanwha Life Esports feels so much easier to bet on, right? Like so much easier to get behind is because Zeka's performance has upped so much. I think like we talk about mid jungle all the time, but I think like mid laners being able to make those clutch plays that BDD can make, that is I think really, really important. And I think Zeka has stood up to that. I don't think we've seen as much of it, like Wolf is saying, from Chovy, which makes it like a little bit more difficult to have.
He
like,
has done it, but like it's
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
you
but-
don't expect it as much. Like
he's just not on the upswing as much as like what we've seen, and it's because he was always up here, right? He was always up really, really high.
You know,
and,
it's like a-
Chovy's amazing, but like
it's-
Zeka's like continuing to like, and we're like, oh god, world Zeka, like brain
so
explosion.
It's like if you put it in Mario Kart like terms with like max speed and acceleration. Like I feel like Chovy is like almost all acceleration, like no max speed. Like his early game, his laning phase, his early skirmish is like really good, but like late game
Well,
team
don't say
fights, he
no
isn't as
max
clutch.
speed.
Sure,
Because
but like
he's
in the
Chovy.
in the small like schism or the frame of like these three players only, and I'm basically saying like it's like 0, 1, or 2, like
their
so,
strengths lie.
yeah, and then BDD is like 0 acceleration, all max speed, like super clutch. His laning phase isn't like bad, but it's like I think of these three the weakest. His
Unless he's
skirmishes
playing
are
TF.
pretty good, right? But like Zeka is like the all rounder actually. Like his laning is really good, but it's like slightly
the
worse
dolphin
than
bike.
He's slightly worse than Chovy at laning,
such
but he's
a
like
specific reference.
Such a
I'm
great
trying to make a
all-rounder
really
bike.
good point. Like,
Yeah.
come on. All right, so Zeka I think is like slightly worse at laning than Chovy, and then slightly worse at laning than BDD. But he has like both. He's like the intersection of both of them, and that like he is making impact in team fights. Like he actually is making those clutch plays. Like maybe not as amazingly as BDD, but like consistently he's doing it, and he lanes well. So like he's the one that's kind of like tricky for me. I think if he shows up in a big way, I think he's gonna be like, he could be the guy who's like, oh yeah, I'm MVP of the finals. We upset.
It's
Hanwha's
Daejeon.
taking a title. It's Daejeon.
It's Deja.
I think
He
if
has fight for the team.
if Hanwha Live's bot lane can really get it together and Grizzly doesn't get overrun by Cuz, I could see that. For Gen G though, I think Gen G are I don't know. They're to me, they are by far the most consistent outside of KT, obviously, because KT is 17-1. But like their consistency is what makes them really scary, and I think that Gen.G, when you look at the finals as well in spring, we had Doran with like the crazy pop-offs, right? But even outside of that, it was the tandem of Delight and Peanut actually working well.
Also,
and Peanut,
Pace, who got,
Yeah.
MVP. That's why he got voted for MVP. Is that enough people thought he was consistent over the 4 games to be the guy.
He is
for
just
MVP,
like,
right?
and Pays is such a known quantity. It's actually kind of crazy that you just never like.
Except when he died to Henna that time.
Yeah, I mean that happens.
yeah, he wasn't
I
born
mean-
when Kog'Maw was released.
Well,
so you can't hold it
exactly, yeah.
against him.
Yeah. Kog'Maw is an ancient champion.
Artifact.
Yeah,
It's a
he's a fossil.
Yeah.
He actually has a fossil skin. It does make some sense, like. Actually, the hard counter to Pays is just to play Cho'Gath and Kog'Maw
Wait, he
with the
didn't-
skeleton skins.
He didn't die though, did he?
No, he didn't
actually
die. He
lived.
just like tried to fight a Kog'Maw that
Yeah,
was
and
chasing
then
him
he
down.
had
Then he
to-
had to
he
ult
ended up-
flash.
died.
Yeah,
He did,
basically
yeah.
He killed his laning phase.
No,
Yeah.
the reason why I'm doing this is because at MSI we had like the licorice solo killing bin, which never happened. This happened. Yeah, the whole broadcast was talking about an event that never happened for like weeks. I'm like,
Huh.
yeah, it took like
Maybe he did it in solo
it also
queue.
no, it just didn't happen.
Like
also, it
3
took like
years
it
ago.
took,
The
it,
Mandela
it
effect
took
or whatever.
yeah. It took like a week and a half as well for audiences to figure out. Someone was like, "Wait, I'm going back in these vaults." And anyway, I don't know why that came up, but for Gen.G specifically, I think they need some of their players to really overperform the way that Doran did. And I don't even think it's because otherwise they can't match up to KT, but I think this Gen.G roster needs to believe that they can actually do it. And I think outside of like a surge like that, I also think that KT has not actually been tested that much this split, kind of echoing what was being said before. And if Gen.G can do that in the grand final, then I could see an angle for them.
Actually,
That's the only
I can
angle,
definitely
though.
see an angle where Gen.G wins again. I think it definitely can happen. I don't think it's out of the question at all. Like, they've already done it. They did it against T1. I think they can easily do it against KT again. KT is the unknown quantity. Will they be able to not choke, basically?
So-
Eyes on aiming for me.
I do.
for
I
sure.
kind of want to add a PSA just like right here, because we've been sort of talking down to Gen.G in this particular conversation right here. I think that this team could, in like almost any world, just win. They could easily just win. Like, I think that it's much closer, but like we have to have this conversation as if we've got like 3 separate tiers, right? Because KT just like broke all of their records this season.
Yeah.
Like KT looked
And they just 2-0'd them
incredibly
as well.
consistent, and they just 2-0'd them in the regular season here. I think Gen.G in best of 5, domestically especially, has always been a
been
dominant force,
unreal.
except like against T1. And
Yeah.
T1 looks not very good at
Except
the
that
moment.
one time.
But also,
Like,
like,
I feel like T1.
It's not
T1's always
actually-
been Gen.G's kryptonite, though.
yeah,
Like
but
that's
not
been
over
the
the
thing.
last like year and a half. Last time was in like so World's Gauntlet 2021.
I'm just saying that, like, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they are just very, very consistent
Yeah,
domestically. Like they've been winning and winning and winning and winning. Now that threat has dissipated, right?
I mean, I like the percentage, right? I'm saying like KT 60, just with how going
Yep.
into playoffs, because we're gonna have a
just
PogState
wanted
for
to
finals as well, right?
I just wanted to caveat
Yeah, of
just to
course.
say that like it's not as far as we've been sort of
Yeah, yeah,
alluding
no,
to, because
yeah.
we have to talk about it in the microcosm of these like
Yeah.
3 teams that we're
Speaking
having a
of, like, we should
conversation
probably
about.
put the teams.
So-
Yeah, just write it down.
I actually
So-
think it's like 50-40. I don't even think it's
Fair?
60-30.
Wow, where does the 10 go?
Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute, 54.
Ten
So-
is for
so
Home
are we
Life
actually-
Esports.
are we
There's no
actually-
other team in the
Are
conversation?
we actually gonna hit the the free one for Gen.G and then the one free where Gen.G?
for KT.
Yeah. So KT win upper, but then Gen.G win.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
I'm not ready to
3-0
assume
for
that,
KT
like-
and then 3-2 for Gen.G.
Yeah.
That's what I want. That's the narrative. That's the narrative
Why
right
don't we
there.
I
just-
think KT win here,
So
though.
KT
Yeah,
always
they-
win
yeah.
upper.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they always
3-1?
win upper. Yep. 3-0.
No.
There's no way they
And then
3-0.
3-2
I think it's a
KT.
3-1.
3-1,
I'm a
right?
3-2
3-1.
Gen.G.
I'm a 3-1 on this one.
All right, 3-1. We can 3-1. That's
A
fine.
little bit of happy gaming from KT
Don't
recently
draw
makes
over
me
it.
think.
Yedim's fantastic drawing, by the way.
I had
That is
to.
true. It is very
So-
beautiful. Thank you so much.
T1 Hanwha.
3-0 Hanwha.
3-0 Hanwha.
3-0 Hanwha.
unfortunately. Sorry, T1.
This is.
It's impossible to predict.
It's
Like,
Daejeon.
we'll have a better idea after their first
Yeah,
series.
maybe,
but
like-
Actually, that's not even
Because
Daejeon.
No, it's not. But it's going
Yes,
to be
Daejeon.
Daejeon. Viper has to go home.
Because obviously, if KT versus T1 is really close, then this would look really silly. But right now, I think, yeah, I'm with you guys.
So Genji Hanwha.
And that is there anything more egregious than a 3-0?
no.
And actually, no, I don't think it's like that.
Well, I feel like this
think
bracket
it's
is way
that
less
bad.
interesting than last season's. This time we're just like, yeah, it's pretty obvious.
But I'm trying to work out how we go catastrophically wrong. Because, like, remember last time
We
we did
always
this whole
do.
thing and it was wrong from the beginning. And I'm
That's
wondering
because
where...
DK lost to Hanwha like he's-
Yeah, so now
well,
they're going to
then-
win,
also
and it's going to
T1
ruin
picked
everything.
KT, which you guys didn't expect, but I did.
Yeah.
Look into your crystal ball, Wolf.
No, I mean, my crystal ball like literally says all of this right now.
Yeah. So we're just following it. I'm
Question
get.
mark?
Oh man, I just want to do 2,
we save
3.
it for the
I want to do
finals
2.
Yeah, that's
3.
that's exactly what I was
think
gonna
we
say. I was
don't
like,
put a
why don't
score
we?
in.
No.
Because there's no reason to predict the
Oh.
series twice
Yeah,
and just
of-
assume what's gonna happen.
No,
Why don't we
of-
wait?
No, of course we're going to predict it so we can be wrong, and it's funny. We literally have Comic Sans'd right in front of
All
us.
right. I mean,
Like, I
Atomic
think-
Sands.
I know we might get clowned for this, but the value of this is to go, how do we perceive this? I actually would think we should predict KT winning in a 3-2 as opposed to Genji.
Yeah, 3-2 or 3-1
For Genji?
for KT.
3-2 for
KT.
KT.
Do I predict
'Cause
with
it's
my
hard- how
brain or
can you-
my waters?
I mean, basically, you have to tell
don't
people
trust
that
your
you
waters.
expect that KT will choke, and that's why you think Genji will win the
No,
second
I
time.
mean, I
to
think we
predict
can.
it
I think we can
otherwise.
go 3-2. I'm down for
Or
a
Genji
3-2.
overperforms again.
Yeah, I don't think
have to be KT
doesn't have to be
choking.
KT choking. We already know that Genji is good enough to win the title.
all right.
It is kind of like predicting like the weather from inside of a cave to do this,
Yeah.
but like
Well, yeah, I mean that's the point.
DRX 3-2.
3-2.
I think it could go 5.
3-2
Yeah,
for
it's
Lance
finals.
Fox.
Extra Genji
It's
fan
Daejeon.
energy. It's Daejeon.
It's Daejeon.
Yeah.
Actually, I quite like the bracket. I think it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, we did last time as well.
Scoot
I think-
back so we can get like the full shot of it for like.
Take a screenshot.
Take
thumbnails.
a screenshot so you can
okay,
lol at us.
So what are we gonna get flamed for? So
The DKT one.
DRX beat the Home Alive, obviously.
We're T1 biased.
Yeah,
We don't believe in
T1
Barrel.
bias caster.
We don't
Okay.
believe in
DK
Barrel, which is
crushes
Yeah.
totally wrong.
Don't
Like,
believe in Barrel. Obviously, Kenyon was gonna Goomba Stomp 3
Yeah,
games
we
in a
should've seen
row.
this coming.
And
He's, like,
KT
the
are
best
chokers,
so they're
jungler
obviously
in the
gonna
KT
world.
lose.
choke.
Yeah.
KT choke against D+.
Yeah.
Yeah, KT like aiming doesn't actually connect to the game.
Yeah.
Cuz is like playing Viego, but he doesn't
And
use
also,
his
like,
resets.
we're betting against Humble Life Esports when Viper's going to Daejeon, and it's
Daejeon.
Daejeon. We're
It's
idiots.
Daejeon.
All right,
It's
so
Daejeon.
so Home Alive win there. Then it's Home Alive versus D+.
And then we get the rematch, and Canyon gets his revenge on the Grizzly. Shows him just how much larger a polar bear is in real
So
life.
will we get a tweet from Mr. Arnold or not?
Nah, I
Based
think
on-
I think
It's
we're
very-
gonna be okay.
It's
And he was very
spicy,
nice
very
afterwards.
enjoyable.
Yeah.
I think
And we
just a little
generally
bit
like
of banter.
Arnold.
is
I'm
fine.
saying this in the episode. This is exactly what he wanted, where we actually back up every
Yeah.
prediction we make and have a conversation and a little bit of a like, it's not an argument, but like somewhat of a debate on some other things. So this is
Maybe
did
we
it.
could have
All
him
right,
on
it's
the
out
next
there.
episode.
should.
and
Don't dare look
he
at
can
the
evaluate
screenshot.
us.
No, we should. That would be
And say we're
okay.
wrong.
I don't agree with evaluate it, but it could be fun.
I
Go
wanted
for
to give me a
finals
ranking out of
episode.
10.
We get Rapid Star and Arnold on
Oh, that'd be dope.
for a KT Genji finals.
I
PogState
think,
episode.
well, I think Rapid Star probably has
Poggers?
more important
Well,
things.
I know, but he's the only guy
Yeah.
I know at KT that speaks English. So
Yeah, true.
Well, who else? I mean, are you gonna get like the guy who sits like in the lobby and like cheers on the players when he comes?
don't
Like
know.
the higher ups in KT are not quite as public figures as Arnold is.
no, but I just need to
We
speak
could always
English.
ask.
Yeah.
That's what we'll do. That will do it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you just prior to the final for another episode of the PogState, and we'll see you there.